Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled Overprivileged Parking. Back in college, I lived in this on-campus apartment that was separated from the rest of the campus. Parking was very limited over there, which leads to many issues. Early on in the year, there was one girl with a shiny new BMW that mommy and daddy just bought her who thought she was entitled to take up multiple spots when she parked, no matter how packed the parking lot was. One day when I saw her in the act, I asked her to move her car over so that I can take the spot next to her. She immediately snapped back, saying, "Mind your own ducking business, I can park however I want." Not wanting to cause any issues, I drove away. The next day, I saw her car parked the same way, and saw my opportunity. My car was older and already beat up, so I didn't care too much about the condition of it. I got out, folded my mirror in, and pulled into the spot next to her. I stayed within the lines, but got so close that she couldn't open up the driver door. A few minutes later, my roommate, who drives a massive truck and knew about what happened, sends me a picture. He had parked so close to her on the other side that now none of the doors could be opened. We then waited until she came out to her car. We could see the cars from our apartment, and boy did she throw a tantrum. The only thing funnier was watching her climb through the trunk to get into her car. After that, she made sure to never double park again. The next one is titled, "Oh, but that's not a parking spot." I think this is the most petty I have ever been, and no need to ask if I was the a-hole, cause I totally was. But it tickled me and a few others. This happened a few weeks back and still makes my friends I have made laugh about it. I do deliveries around our town, and as such I need gas to do so. There is one gas station I hit up every morning before work because the gas is cheapest, it is on my route to work and it has a better selection of breakfast snacks and drinks than the others around it. Since I have been stopping off there a minimum of 3 times a week for the last 6 years, I have gotten to know the owner and a few of the long-time staff there. They are all good people and treat me nicer than normal employees do. So I try to treat them with as much respect as I possibly can. One morning while I am filling up, one of the female employees, we'll call her Rachel for this story, was standing idly by one of the pumps. She has a few mental problems but is one of the nicest people I know. So while my gas is being filled, I strike up a conversation. She tells me she ain't doing so hot because she is supposed to take out the trash from the outside bins and put it in the dumpster around the side of the building. The way the building is designed, there is only one way to get to the dumpster to put anything in it, and that way is clearly marked with signs and paint saying, "Do not park here or block the dumpster." I look over and there is a caravan of about 5 minivans parked around the area. Most were in legit parking spaces, but the biggest one with a massive roof rack was parked awkwardly in front of the dumpster, completely blocking it off. I asked Rachel if she had asked them to move and she said they would move when they were done, and that was over 30 minutes ago. I feel for Rachel and her sad face at that time, so I tell her I will make it up to her. After getting the nozzle put back up and got my car ready, I drove over to where the van was parked and parked my car in the first open parking spot behind it, effectively completely blocking it in. I get out of my car and walk about 5 steps away when a screeching Karen pokes her head out of the front window of the van. "Hey! Can you move your car? I'm parked here." Me, "Oh, but that's not a parking spot." Her, "Well, yeah, that's why I'm trying to get out of it." Me, "Okay, but hold on. I'll just be a minute." I proceed to walk inside the store to get my morning meal, as I hear Karen screaming for me to come back. As the doors shut in the store, I notice the place is overrun with families buying travel snacks. They are all milling about, but a few are looking out the window saying, "I wonder what Karen is yelling about." They are clearly all in her caravan. By the time I grab my food and drink and make it to the checkout line, she has stormed her way in and is trying to tell me to move my car now. I tell her I can't leave, that would be stealing, so I am going to buy my stuff and leave. She huffs at this and notices everyone in front of her is a member of her traveling party, so she just glares at me the whole time. I finally make it to the front after like 10 minutes and go, "Oh wait, shoot, this isn't what I wanted, I'll go put it back and grab what I really want." Luckily I was still very early for getting to work, so I was milking it for all it was worth. Karen is fuming. When I make it back to the line, someone else is getting in line in front of me and Karen is trying to tell him to move so I can go first. The owner, we'll call Jess, tells her she isn't allowed to talk to customers that way, and one more outburst from her and she will kick her out of the store. Karen mutters to herself but is silent. I go up to check out, moving and talking as slow as I can, and ask for a lottery ticket as well. After paying, since no one is behind me, I scratch it off. What do you know, I won a free ticket. So I buy another one and proceed to scratch it off. Karen to that point had been mildly tolerable, but then she let out this unholy screech and told me to stop wasting her time. To which Jess told her to leave. Karen started to refuse and Jess picked up her phone threatening to call the cops. Karen is then swift to leave at this point, now yelling at her caravan as to why they have to wait. I thank Jess for all of that she has done so far and explain what was going on, still really slowly. She laughs and tells me how much she hates people who park there. They get all defensive when you tell them that they can't park there, but this is the first time anyone got their comeuppance over it. I left and saw Rachel standing near my vehicle, doing her best not to laugh. I load up my car and asked if everything is better and she nods enthusiastically. I move my car to the other side of the lot and watch them all leave one by one, but not before Karen pulled out in front of someone and almost wrecked. The next one is titled, I didn't plan on getting him blacklisted. In my teens, I had to have numerous operations. Therefore, I always ended up at one particular hospital that specialized in my condition. Now, the hospital was high quality, with staff that was very caring, and looked out for the patients they had. They gave you essentially the 5-star treatment. After all, they were charging our insurance an incredible amount of money, so that probably had something to do with it. But one particular operation I had, it all went to heck. It wasn't like this type of procedure wasn't something I had not done in the past, it was about the 3rd time I needed to have it done. No pressure whatsoever. Essentially it entailed breaking both your legs, placing rods into them to put them back into the proper place so they would end up growing correctly. They would be in for a few months to heal, and then they were taken out. During that time, I would have to turn small little handles to reposition my bones according to a pre-printed out schedule given to me by my doctor. It hurt like heck, but it was worth it in the end. Despite how often I had done it, it was still extremely painful, especially for the first few weeks after the procedure was done. Any vibrations would send shockwaves of pain throughout your entire body regardless on how doped up you were on painkillers. So the doctors took extra care to ensure that any trip back home was as smooth as possible. Literally. They all understood that without a jet back to your home city, for anyone more than 40 minutes away from the hospital, it was medically required that you travel back home in a med jet. Imagine every single bump you experience when driving for any period of time. Now imagine being sent into shockwaves of 10 out of 10 pain every single time you went over that bump. You get the idea. Now, most hospitals offer a liaison to individuals within the hospital to deal with their insurance. Just have that individual talk to the doctor, and right away they would work out what the doctor wanted with the company, no hassle. We didn't take up that offer because we understood how everything worked, and it was never an issue. But the hospital always offered us one anyway. And yes, these liaisons were not employees of the insurance company, but of the hospital. They were designed to look after the best interests of the patients, and justify it to the insurance company. Then, our designated liaison decided that our request to not have one was unacceptable, and thus he would intentionally intervene at every chance he could. He even went as far as to deny our nurse requests for extra pillows, because the hospital only allows X number of pillows per person, despite the nurse literally stating it was fine. But nope, since he was at a high level, he apparently had final say. When it was nearing our time to leave the hospital, like always, the doctor wanted to bill the insurance for the medical jet, because it was medically required. Same old same old. However, our clown liaison disagreed with the doctor's assessment that it was medically required, justifying his opinion based upon our insurance company's definition of medically required. Naturally, the doctor flipped his lid, and verbally curb-stomped the idiot. Liaison, listen, simply avoiding pain isn't something that the insurance will cover. It's not medically required to avoid pain. Drive, are you kidding me? You realize this patient would have to drive 12 hours in a cramped ambulance, with 2 broken legs, in excruciating pain if they didn't fly. It's absolutely unheard of. You literally would have to have 2 EMTs drive them back home just in case anything happened. The cost is only marginally smaller than the darn jet. Plus, there is a small chance the rods could become disrupted if anything happens in the car. That's the justification. Liaison: the odds of any crash happening are not high enough for the company to justify it. This would hurt the company if they keep doing this. Drive: listen, I don't know why on God's green earth you're even arguing with me. This isn't up to you. You are not a doctor, you have no medical training. You were given a god-darn list of the insurance company's policies, and now you think you can properly diagnose what is or is not medically required? I've done this for thousands of patients with this very company. Now get your butt back to your office, bill the freaking insurance company properly, and shut the heck up. You work for us, not for them. I was in earshot of this entire conversion. A week later, on the day of departure, we learned what happened when he went back to his office. He had called the insurance company, and began going through the proper channels to get the jet approved. However, he began dropping small hints to the rep that in his opinion, driving would also be fine. So naturally, on the day before our departure we got a call from the insurance company denying the request. I was furious. There wasn't time to appeal the decision. There wasn't anything any of us could do. Even my doctor was stuck, because the liaison worked for a different department, and he couldn't even fire the guy. He apologized time and time again, and ensured the 12-hour ambulance ride would be as comfortable as possible, and even told the driver to keep me as medicated as possible to ensure it went well. Naturally, it did nothing, and it was the most hellish 12-hour experience of my life. I was screaming the entire 12 hours. The ambulance wasn't even outfitted with a bed, it only had some type of hammock-type thing. 2 EMTs had to endure non-stop screaming from someone who didn't even belong in the ambulance in the first place. Everyone was furious. Everyone blamed that one man. Everyone wanted him fired, but they had no medical reason to fire him, because according to the union's policies, he technically did what he was supposed to do. The only way for him to be let go was for him to have caused the patient some type of harm that the doctor warned about. So days after my trip, my doctor insisted that I see a medical professional in my hometown. Ensure nothing happened on the trip. This was like the third time I had this done, so it was a pretty common request I was familiar with. As I was still fuming, this is when I hatched my plan. I knew I was the only one with control over the rod's proper position. I knew having the rods not properly dialed in for a few days wouldn't do any long-term harm, and would only result in a lot of pain to dial it back in afterwards. I knew my doctor would be furious if anything happened out of the ordinary, his reputation being on the line and such, and I knew no medical professional had checked my rods to confirm their current setting after the trip. I popped 3 pain pills, waited for them to kick in, and unscrewed every single rod to the lowest setting possible. Just for reference, after the procedure, they end up setting the starting point for these rods somewhere in the mid-range of their settings. Worst pain of my entire life. I was wheeled into my local doctor with the adjustment notebook in hand. I kept playing dumb, saying I believed everything was going fine. But my legs just felt awful. And if it was possible he could make sure everything was going okay. He began his inspection, and his face went white when he realized where the bolts were set. He asked me what setting they had been on when I left the hospital, and I told him. Again, he did not look happy. He told me that something must have happened on the trip, and he would need to properly adjust them back into place. He said it would hurt like heck, but it needed to be done. The screaming at that appointment was, let's just say, disruptive. I didn't even have to fake it, it was genuinely one of the most painful things I have ever experienced in my life. My doctor was furious, as he was up to date on the entire liaison situation. He excused himself after the readjustment of the rods to a back room. I assume he thought it was out of earshot. He was wrong. He phoned my doctor out of state, and he had a few choice words for him. Local doctor, how could you let this happen? Do you know how dangerous this could have been? If he hadn't got an appointment with me this fast, his freaking bones would have permanently grown in the wrong place, and he would need another surgery to fix this freaking mess. I don't know what kind of freaking operation you have over there, but there is zero chance I will ever refer anyone in my clinic to you. Do you hear me? How hard is it to control your freaking insurance handlers? Fast forward to my operation to remove my rods. Back in that specialist hospital out of state, the liaison was not just terminated. Oh no. The liaison got accused of intentionally trying to endanger the life of a patient and lying to the insurance company and lying about a doctor's medical assessment for his own benefit. No idea where this last accusation came from. Maybe it was lodged as an additional justification to fire him. I don't quite know all the consequences of his actions. I only could muster up a few details from my doctor. From what my doctor described, the hospital put out a notice to every hospital in the state to not hire this man. Those hospitals apparently also sent out a notice to all the hospitals in their surrounding areas to not hire this man. This ended up resulting in a domino effect that barred him from working in almost every hospital in the country. I wanted him fired, but I didn't plan on getting him blacklisted. Nevertheless, I was giddy. Especially after my doctor informed me that there was no lasting damage for the mistake he caused. Fast forward about 4 years, and I hear through the grapevine that he ended up having to change professions because of the accusations. Ended up doing some waste management job or something. The next one is titled, Nuclear Revenge Activated. My parents divorced when I was in 1st grade. Not only did my dad disappear like Houdini, he stole my mother's ATM card to her personal account and drained her dry. My mother, being the saint she is, didn't even bat an eye. She still was cordial to him and never said a negative word about him. To me, my dad, albeit abandoning us, was still my hero. From 1st through 5th grade, I had the usual abandoned by dad stories. Maybe 1 or 2 visits in a year. That in addition to the 50 or so instances of me waiting by the front window with my suitcase packed to go to his house and him never showing up. My mum through all of this was supportive and never said an ill word about him. So he still stayed my hero. When I was in 6th grade, my mother finally remarried and my father, who only had a picture of me at 8 months old in his wallet, went ballistic. Did I mention he never paid child support? He would use his father's social security number, they had the same name, to get away with it. After my mum remarried, he let it be known that I was now my stepdad's responsibility. He cut off communication with me until I graduated from high school. He didn't attend my graduation or send a card. What he did do was writing me an email thanking God he no longer had to pay child support. He didn't anyway. What really broke me was his ruthless and brutal attack on my mother. Attacking her weight, looks, teeth, and blaming any perceived negative traits that I had on her. For the first time I realized what a cowardly piece of trash he was. I responded in kind. He told me I was no child of his and that I was a waste. After that, I vowed that I would hurt him. 10 years later, my father, not interested in my wedding or my son, reached out to me. You see, he is a diabetic, and one of his organs were failing, and he didn't have long. He's too far down on the list, and he needed someone in our family to donate. Nuclear revenge activated. I answered his email. I met up with him and pretended that I didn't hate his guts. I went and got tested to see if I was a match. I was. Did the therapy and met with doctors and his therapist. We scheduled the surgery. The day of the surgery we meet at the hospital. I smiled in his face and let him know that I wouldn't be going through with the surgery. I watched the confusion line his face. I just wanted you know that you're no father to me and you're a waste. I left the hospital and drive home. My mum was pretty annoyed with me that I took it that far. My father is dying and I will be attending the funeral out of spite. And I will let everyone know what a piece of trash he was. The last one is titled, They Knew I Did It, They Just Had No Way of Proving It. I used to work for some kind of full-stack agency as a coder, doing websites, desktop applications and integrations for customers. Life was good and it even got better. After managing to provide an important customer with 5-star hotels all around my country with a great website with integration to their ERP and also mobile solutions which didn't exist then in my country, a headhunter had found me. He offered nearly triple the salary I was getting and it was impossible to say no to that. I informed my employer and gave him a generous notice of a month so I could wrap up the last projects. Let me warn you that I was a very young and incredibly trusting person then. When my employer told me there were some problems and I'd have to receive my last paycheck with the next one, I accepted. Last day of my job, when he asked me to sign the paper that declares I had nothing indebted to me by that company, I signed it. I was a moron. I was young. They never paid, of course. Even though being stiff that way was a lump in my throat, I tried to gulp it down. I worked hard at my new job, trying to prove that I could do better than I did before. But another sneak attack from my ex-employers was the last drop. One day I arrived at work, and my new employer called me to his office. He explained that my ex-employer reached out to him and told him that I was lazy, a liar, worthless, and it wasn't worth the effort to have me as an employee because they were about to sue me, so I wouldn't be able to do any work with all the legal stuff. I was beet red. I apologized for being a nuisance and I said I'd clear my desk instantly. He laughed cheerfully and said, "You've been working for me for 2 weeks. You completed 2 high-quality websites and half of a desktop app. I'll cut my own throat before I fire you." Still, I was so shaken that he had to give permission to me to leave early. I went home and cried. Not because of sorrow, but rage. I couldn't touch them. I just couldn't. That's the day I fired up Google and typed "how to hack" for the first time in my life. The first response was a forum in my native language. I started reading and gosh, I had a lot to read. Coding and hacking, even though they share the same expertise, vary so much when it comes to details. I confess, it was then impossible for me to think like them, but thankfully the forum crawled with helpful technical tutorials telling me the hows and whys of every exploit I could use. As I said, I was young and a moron. Back then I had my own mini admin framework that I used in every website I made, and I just realized there was a crucial mistake I made in calls to create new records, users, pages, news items, galleries, everything. I wasn't checking the authorization at all. It would be nearly impossible for a hacker to use this because he wouldn't know or get exposed to the exact call, but I knew it. It was about 6 a.m. when I finished reading. I used public transportation to go to the other end of the city. I found an internet cafe where the young attendant didn't care about IDs and which didn't have any security cameras. I sat in a corner and started breaking every single website I made for them. There was one about pastry materials, a website consisting of over 1,000 ingredients. In the main page, a random assortment from each ingredient type would be shown as a gallery. I replaced about 20 of them with images of human waste. Only 20, so a viewer who got used to it wouldn't realize the error until some time has passed. I made the chief physician of a hospital page the angel of death itself, with images and a special bio. People don't look into physician bio pages, so I was sure it wouldn't be found out for long. I made an announcement in ultra-nationalist Party A's website that their #1 enemy would be giving a speech. In a local newspaper page I made all old videos instead linked to the famous Loituma video where an anime girl spins a leek in her hand. Slowly, a few websites a day, I broke every single website I made for them, approximately 60 websites or so. The backlash from customers seems to have been furious, in a domino effect. He lost his customers' trust and his references, which simply means everything for this kind of job. Once the proud owner of one of the best agents in the region now tries to work in a tiny office making a living doing third-rate websites with his meager skill. Even though I never met him during this period, one of my friends was working under him until the last moment. I loved listening to his struggle to find out how I did it. They knew I did it, they just had no way of proving it, while losing more and more customers every day from my friend. Thanks for listening.